So we planted a church almost 7 years ago called Imago Dei, and I still have sermon notes from about 10 years ago when I was teaching through some a theology class at the church where I was at the time. And I have in my notes, if I ever plant a church, I want to call it Imago Dei. And I really had two motivations, two thoughts in mind. One was we want to be a church that loves everyone, regardless of age, regardless of race, regardless of background. The doctrine of Imago Dei inspires and informs the way we treat people. And so I really wanted that to be embedded in our church, that we are a welcoming people because we believe in the Imago Dei. And then we also wanted to use it because to be made in the image of God means many things in terms of reflecting the character of God. Right? You could talk about being made in the Imago Dei. We are relational people, we are moral people, but we're also a missional people because our God is a missionary God. And to be made in the Imago Dei implies that we are to be a missionary people. And so our God is not a tribal deity over one nationality. He is the God of the nations. And I mean, you see this right from cover to cover in the Bible, from the choosing of Abraham, that you will be the father of many nations, and you're anticipating the Messiah through the Old Testament, and all of these prophecies about the nations and the Messiah, and Jesus comes and acts as, we read the book of Acts, and the church begins to preach the gospel throughout the known world. And in Revelation, Jesus has a people for himself from every tribe and tongue. And so if you just read the storyline of the Bible, you see two things. You see a messianic focus in the whole Bible, but because there's that messianic focus, you also see this missional focus. The two really go together.
Everyone is of inestimable worth to God the Father. And so, although the world will have ways of making some people worth more or worth less, the gospel shows us everyone has supreme worth. And so, whatever the world may think of a particular group of people, we should be thinking they're made in the image of God, they were made to know God, and we owe them the very same gospel that people brought to us. And it's good for us to bear in mind that it's good for me to bear in mind that the very first people who went around sharing the gospel did not look like me, did not dress like me, did not talk like me. And yet, because they saw the worth of every human being hearing the gospel came to people who look like me. And so I'm at the service of cross-cultural mission because I wouldn't have become a Christian apart from cross-cultural mission. The gospel would not have reached my neighbourhood and my country were it not for people recognising that actually us pasty people in the North Atlantic were also worth reaching with the gospel.
The meta-narrative of Scripture, the major symphonic movements of creation and fall and redemption and new creation, those are familiar to every gospel-minded Christian. They come to us just by reading Scripture and understanding these giant symphonic moves that tell us the storyline of Scripture. But sometimes when we're thinking about certain questions, such as the image of God or such as the gospel, or just summarize it as the Great Commission, we don't take the time to connect how the storyline of Scripture puts this all together in one symphonic whole. In the first chapter of Scripture, we have humanity made in God's image, as God's image. And then we come in the storyline of Scripture to the fall. And there the image is not destroyed, but it is corrupted. And human beings are confused. And that confusion can turn not only dangerous, but very deadly. And it's confusion from which human beings cannot extricate ourselves. We can't rescue ourselves. And the problem of sin requires a redeemer. And then for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whosoever believes in him might not perish but have everlasting life. The world language in John is going right back to the world language in Genesis. Genesis 1 and John 1 tied together. John 3, God so loved the world. Well, how does God love the world? Does God love whom in the world? It's the image bearers for whom he died. And then you come to the end of the Gospel of Matthew, and the text we know is the Great Commission, to go into all the world. Well, to whom are we going? We're going to image bearers who, like us, are now sinners, who desperately need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ in order that hearing they would believe, and believing they would be saved. And of course, this is pointing us towards eschatology and the marriage supper of the Lamb, where image bearers from every tongue and tribe and people and nation are gathered together, declaring the worthiness of the Lamb. And you look at all that and you say, how does the image of God, just as one biblical theme, how does it hold fast and continuous and true? It shows us its grounding in creation and in God's purpose before the creation of the entire cosmos. It follows through the reality of the fall and then the glory of redemption. But then it points us to a greater glory yet, greater than the garden, where image bearers who in the garden talked with God in the cool of the day now are at a marriage supper festival. And after all the confusion of Babel and the dispersal to all the nations, and after every evidence of human confusion and every corruption and denial of human dignity and the image of God in each other, now redeemed humanity, representing every nation, is seated at a table which is a festival, which is even greater than in the garden.